It started with a sound, soft, unthinking, too loud for a house where someone else was home. I don't know why I forgot Dad was downstairs. Maybe it was because Kyle was close, whispering in my ear, holding me like the world outside didn't exist. Maybe I forgot because I wanted to, because it had been too long, and I was desperate for this moment. Then the sound changed. My heart jumped. The floorboard creaked downstairs. Then footsteps slow and deliberate. Kyle froze beside me, his breath warm against my shoulder. We didn't move, not a twitch, as if staying still could make the world pause. "I think he heard that," Kyle whispered. My chest raced. I glanced toward my door. It was closed, but not locked. Another creak came, closer this time. Kyle slipped away quietly and grabbed his jacket in the dark. "Shit. Get ready," he muttered. I scrambled to cover myself with the blanket, trying to calm my shaking chest and the whirlwind of thoughts running through my head. Kyle tucked his shoes into his bag and whispered, "You didn't lock it." I shook my head, panic rising. "We hadn't thought we'd be that noticeable." Then knock knock. I froze. Kyle vanished behind my closet door, barely making a sound. And then I heard a voice, not my dad's. My stomach sank. It was Daniel, his best friend. He sounded close. I pulled the blanket tighter and whispered, "Yeah, I'm fine, just sleeping." Silence. My throat went dry as the doorknob slowly turned. Kyle didn't move. He stayed hidden, tense, hoping the moment would pass. My heart was pounding, every second stretching endlessly. And then the door creaked open, inch by inch. Light from the hallway spilled into the room. Daniel stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, still in the same black t-shirt he'd worn earlier at the gym. He scanned the room silently. His eyes landed on the edge of the bed, and then on me. Hair messy, breathing uneven, I forced a shaky smile. "Just having a dream," I said, trying to sound casual. "Sorry if I was loud." Daniel didn't smile. He stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind him. Click. My throat went dry. From the closet, I could hear Kyle's quiet, shallow breathing. Daniel noticed, his gaze flicking toward the closet before returning to me. "Your dad's in the garage," he said quietly. "Didn't hear a thing." I swallowed hard. Daniel moved a little closer. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like he could hear it. "You might want to be more careful next time," he added. I forced a chuckle. "Right. Yeah. Sorry." He stood beside the bed, towering, and I couldn't bring myself to meet his eyes. The air carried the sharp scent of his cologne, cedarwood with something deeper underneath, something that lingered. Then he leaned slightly closer. Not threatening, just enough to speak quietly. "Tell your friend in the closet. He should have locked the door." My chest tightened. Daniel stepped back and headed for the door. Before he left, he glanced over his shoulder, and for a moment his eyes held something I couldn't quite place. Not disgust. Not surprise. Something closer to curiosity. Then he left, closing the door gently behind him. I didn't move for a full minute. Then I rushed to the closet and pulled it open. Kyle stepped out, eyes wide, whispering, "What just happened?" I shook my head. He didn't need an answer, he already knew. Kyle grabbed his things, gave me one last look, and slipped out the window like he always did. I sat on the bed, heart still pounding. Then I noticed something. The door wasn't just closed, it was locked. From the inside, I didn't sleep that night. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw Daniel standing there, tall, silent, watching. The way he looked at me stayed in my mind. It wasn't judgment. It wasn't anger. It was something else, something I couldn't explain. Had he locked the door to protect me? Or to protect himself? The next morning, I came downstairs late. Dad and Daniel were sitting at the table drinking coffee like nothing had happened. Dad smiled when he saw me. "You sleep okay, Rye?" I nodded. "Yeah, just weird dreams." Daniel didn't speak. He only glanced at me for a second, just long enough to make my heart race again. I looked away, pretending everything was normal. Daniel sipped his coffee calmly, his expression unreadable. Then Dad's phone rang and he stepped out to take the call, leaving us alone. The silence was heavy. I didn't know what to say or even what to think. Daniel finally turned toward me, eyes steady, and spoke so quietly I almost missed it. "You closed the window after your friend left," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm. My heart stopped. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I always do." He didn't smile, didn't move. He just reached over and brushed a crumb off the table with his finger. "Smart," he said quietly. Then Dad came back in, laughing into his phone, breaking the moment completely. But I wasn't okay. Something about the way Daniel said smart didn't feel casual. It wasn't teasing. It wasn't friendly. It felt like a warning, or something I didn't understand yet. That evening, Dad left to run errands, saying Daniel would hang around and help set up a shelf in the garage. I nodded, my chest tight, trying to act normal. He was staying, alone, in the same house. I went upstairs and tried to distract myself, but 20 minutes later there was a soft, rhythmic knock at my door. My fingers tightened on the desk. I didn't answer. Then I heard his voice. "It's just me, Daniel." I froze. The door stayed closed. "I'm not coming in this time," he said after a pause. "I just want to talk." I stood up slowly, my hand trembling as I reached the knob. I cracked the door open just a sliver. Daniel was there, calm, wearing a gray hoodie and sweatpants like he'd come over to talk, not to stir up anything. His eyes scanned me quickly, messy hair, tired expression, but he didn't comment. "You all right?" he asked softly. I nodded, unable to say more. He paused, looking up at the ceiling, exhaling like he didn't want to speak. "I shouldn't have walked in last night," he said finally. My breath caught. "I saw more than I should have," he added quietly, his voice low, almost careful. My heart dropped. I didn't know how to respond. His eyes lingered just a second too long before he turned and stepped back, leaving the room feeling impossibly still, heavy with unspoken words. I whispered without meaning to. He looked back at me. "That's not what I meant," he said. And somehow, the way he said it, it felt like he held a secret I didn't. He stepped just an inch closer, and the air between us shifted, tightened. "I didn't tell your dad," he said quietly. "Not because I was covering for you," another step, "but because I didn't want to stop thinking about it." My chest tightened. I was speechless. His eyes held mine with a weight I couldn't explain, as if he already knew the storm of thoughts running through me. He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You weren't paying attention. You were distracted, worrying about getting caught." I felt my knees go weak. The tension grew, a quiet, almost unbearable pull in the room. He leaned a fraction closer, just enough to make me realize the intensity of the moment, and then he pulled back calmly. "I'll be in the garage," he said, "if you want to talk," and he walked away, leaving me standing in the doorway, dizzy and overwhelmed by everything unsaid. I should have slammed the door, should have said something, anything to break the tension, but I didn't. I just stood there, heart racing, thinking about the exact moment he leaned in, about how much was left unspoken. That night, I waited for Dad to fall asleep. By 11:00, the house was quiet. I could hear the occasional clank from the garage, but mostly silence. My mind wouldn't settle. I couldn't stop replaying his words, the way he moved, the calmness in his voice, the weight of what he had said. The memory alone kept me awake, heart pounding, every nerve on edge. I couldn't stop thinking about what would have happened if I'd made a different choice. At 11:47, I got up. I told myself I was just getting water, but I knew exactly where I was heading. The garage was dimly lit. A single lamp cast shadows over the shelves he was reorganizing, though nothing really needed organizing. When he heard me, he didn't look up. "Can't sleep?" I asked, voice low. He shrugged, still busy with the shelves, still calm. "You're bold," he said. "Coming down here alone." "I'm not scared," I replied. That made him pause. He finally looked at me, eyes locking mine. "Maybe you should be." My breath hitched. Then he turned back to his work. Silence. I stepped closer, standing just behind him. "You were the one in my room earlier," I said. He chuckled quietly, bitter, almost frustrated. I walked in to stop something I thought shouldn't happen, he muttered. But you didn't, I whispered. He froze and turned slowly. We were inches apart now. You watched, I added, barely breathing. But he didn't step away. Daniel stared at me like he wanted to deny it, like he needed to, but he didn't. I shouldn't have, he said finally, jaw tight, voice low. But you made me notice. My whole body tensed. I whispered, then don't pretend anymore. He stared at me. The silence between us was thick, pressing against my chest. Then he reached past me and locked the garage door. Click. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. He stepped closer, my back brushing against the workbench. One hand hovered nearby, not touching me but close enough to make the tension almost physical. Say it, he whispered. Right now. I didn't. He leaned slightly, voice quieter now. Leo, I stayed silent. He reached out slowly, tracing a finger along my arm, not harmful but charged with intensity. I shivered. He stopped at my shoulder. You know we can't let this go too far, he whispered. I nodded. He exhaled, frustrated, running a hand through his hair. Just be careful. Don't let anyone find out what you saw. The tension between us broke, slightly, and he stepped back, pacing a few feet. The garage felt smaller now, every shadow amplified. I could feel every second stretching, heavy with everything we hadn't said. I shouldn't, he whispered again, his voice low and careful. But you want to. I froze, my hands tightening on the edge of the workbench, heart pounding. He stepped closer, a quiet intensity in the way he moved, but paused. This doesn't go past here, he muttered. Not yet, I whispered back, breathless. He nodded, a flicker of tension passing over his face, and then stepped back slightly. The intensity between us didn't fade, though. Every glance, every movement felt loaded, like the air itself was holding its breath. When he finally pulled away, I felt lightheaded, my chest tight, my mind spinning. He looked at me, eyes serious, almost unreadable. Then, without a word, he moved toward the door, unlocked it, and left me standing there, my body still buzzing from the tension, my thoughts racing. I didn't talk to him for 3 days. I couldn't. Every time I replayed that moment in the garage, his presence, the way he carried himself, the weight of the conversation, I felt dizzy, unsettled, and on edge. Not just worried about what might happen, but about how much that encounter had affected me. But I didn't have to wait long. On Thursday, Dad invited him over for dinner. He said it casually like it was nothing, just 2 old friends catching up. He had been coming over for years. So why would this time feel different? Because this time I remembered every detail of that moment in the garage. Because this time I knew how intense it felt, how charged the air had been, and how much I still carried it with me. I told myself I could handle it, that I'd stay in my room, avoid eye contact, pretend none of it mattered. That didn't last long. By 7:30 he was already at the table, talking and laughing with Dad, the kind of easy confidence that made the room feel smaller. I walked past them toward the kitchen, eyes glued to my phone, pretending to be busy. Hey kid, he said casually. I glanced up just long enough to nod, just long enough to catch the look he gave me. Not casual, not friendly, just sharp, like he was noticing everything I was trying to hide. I turned away quickly and stepped into the kitchen. That's when I heard Dad say, Leo, grab the wine from the top shelf for me, would you? Of course it was on the highest one. Of course he followed me in. I didn't hear him approach, but I felt his presence behind me. The second I stretched to reach the bottle, he was there. Close, silent. Just his presence pressed lightly in the space behind me, and I nearly lost my balance. You're tense, he murmured quietly. Don't, I whispered back. He's right there. I know, he said, stepping back slightly, letting the tension linger. Just as I steadied the bottle, Dad walked into the kitchen, breaking the moment completely. Everything good? Dad asked. Daniel smiled easily, not missing a beat. Just helping him reach it. He's taller than I remember. Dad laughed. Must have gotten it from his mom's side. I forced a smile, though my chest felt tight. Dinner was a blur. Daniel sat across from me, calm and collected. While I tried not to look at him, not to think about the words he'd said before, the things I still didn't understand once, his foot brushed mine under the table. Accident. I moved back. It happened again. My pulse jumped. Dad didn't notice. He kept talking about sports and work, about how Daniel was thinking of opening a gym. Daniel just nodded along, unreadable, never breaking that quiet focus that made it impossible to think straight. Then Dad's phone rang. He excused himself, heading upstairs to take the call. The silence that followed was heavy. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "You've been quiet," he said, voice calm but searching. I didn't answer. "You're still trying to figure me out," he said. "But you're not the only one." My throat felt dry. "I don't know what you mean." He gave a small smile, half knowing, half regret. "You will." Before I could respond, I stood up, pushing my chair back. "I'm done eating." I left the table and walked to my room, heart pounding, every sound magnified. An hour later, there was a knock on my door. Soft. Once, then twice. I didn't move, just stared at the handle, listening. But no one came in. Only silence, and the weight of everything I still didn't understand. Just silence. And then, a note slid under the door. My heart stopped. I stared at the folded paper on the floor like it might explode. When I picked it up, I recognized the handwriting instantly. 4 words, written sharp and deliberate. "Next time, be honest." I didn't reply. Didn't text. Didn't speak. But I didn't throw it away either. I hid it in the drawer beside my bed and read it more than once. "Next time, be honest." And even though I told myself not to, I started wondering what he meant, wondering if there'd even be a next time. Friday night came. Dad was hosting his usual poker game. Daniel arrived late, laughing like nothing was strange. But when I came downstairs for water, his expression changed the moment he saw me. It wasn't anger, it was recognition. A quiet, unspoken acknowledgement. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard the last of the guests leave. The house fell silent. My room was dark, but I couldn't sleep. My heart raced with every sound in the hallway. Then, faintly, footsteps. Slow. Familiar. They stopped right outside my door. I held my breath. The air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't name. Then a quiet knock. Just one. Not forceful. Measured. "Leo." Daniel's voice came, low and controlled. "We should talk." I didn't answer. Couldn't. My throat was tight, my pulse wild, but he didn't open the door this time. After a long pause, I heard him sigh, step back and walk away. The silence that followed was louder than any noise. I sat there in the dark, staring at the note in my hand, realizing I didn't know if I was relieved or disappointed. "You didn't answer the note." My voice barely worked. "You didn't give me a choice," I whispered. He sat at the edge of my bed, calm, deliberate. "Did you want one?" he asked. My chest tightened. I don't know what I want," I admitted. He leaned closer, eyes steady. "Yes, you do." His hand rested lightly near my shoulder, steadying me, guiding me to face him. "I've watched you wrestle with this for weeks," he said. "But your instincts don't lie," I was shaking. "Tell me to stop," I whispered. He didn't. Instead, he reached out, brushing a hand over my arm in reassurance, close but careful. "You're stronger than you think," he murmured. "You just need to trust yourself." I stayed frozen, heart hammering, mind spinning. He gave me a quiet, understanding smile, leaning back slightly. The tension didn't fade. It lingered, heavy and unspoken, charged with the things we hadn't said. For a long moment, we just sat there, the room silent except for our breathing. I realized I had a choice, whether to stay trapped in my own uncertainty or finally step forward cautiously into the unknown. And that night, I did. Not recklessly, not rashly, but carefully, aware of every step, aware of the weight of what I was choosing. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, every second stretched, waiting for what came next, and that was answer enough. We didn't speak again for the rest of the night. He made me feel things I hadn't felt with anyone before. Not fear, not excitement, but a strange, overwhelming tension. It was confusion. It was surrender. It was wrong. I stayed quiet, keeping my distance, but the memory of the evening pressed on me like a weight I couldn't shake. I fell asleep eventually, alone, thinking about everything that had happened, replaying it in my mind again and again. When I woke up the next morning, the house was empty. Dad was gone. And so was he. All that was left was a message from Kyle. We need to talk. I think your dad knows. Seeing Kyle's name on my screen made my stomach drop. My heart slammed against my ribs. The house felt too quiet, the usual warmth and noise of the morning gone. No coffee mug on the counter, no chatter from the kitchen, no normal routines. Something was off. I texted Kyle back. What do you mean he knows? No reply. I called straight to voicemail. Panic bubbled in my chest. What had Dad seen? What had he heard? Had he walked in while I was distracted, caught up in my own thoughts and confusion? I thought we had been careful. The door was locked. Daniel must have left before morning. Unless Dad had seen something. Unless Daniel had said something. An hour passed, then another. Still no word from Kyle. I couldn't sit still. My head spun with worst-case scenarios. Dad angry, throwing Daniel out, telling Kyle, telling Mom. A sudden knock made me jump. I rushed downstairs and opened the door. It was Kyle. His face was pale, jaw tight, and I knew instantly. He knew. We went to my room. He didn't sit. Just stood there, hands buried in his pockets, eyes darting like he couldn't look at me too long. I came to drop off your charger last night, he said quietly. Thought you'd left it in my car. My throat went dry. I knocked, he continued. No one answered. And then I saw him. My heart stopped. Kyle finally looked up, eyes glassy. Your dad's friend, leaving through your window like he didn't want to be seen. Silence filled the room. You lied to me, Kyle said, his voice breaking. All this time. Kyle, I started. I knew something was off, he snapped. But him, really? I didn't plan it, I whispered. It just happened. Kyle looked at me like I was someone else. Maybe I was. Because everything inside me had changed and not in a way I could fix. He turned and walked out. I didn't stop him. I just sank to the floor, holding back the tears that burned behind my eyes. Everything was falling apart now, and maybe I deserved it. Later that evening, Dad came home. He didn't say much, just looked at me as he passed. Through the kitchen, like he already knew but couldn't find the words. For a second, I thought we might pretend everything was normal, but that hope shattered when he stopped in the hallway. Daniel's not coming over anymore, Dad said flatly. I turned. What? He didn't meet my eyes. He said he needs space. Dealing with some stuff? I don't know exactly what happened, he added. But I know something did, silence. His eyes flicked to me, and for the first time I saw it. Suspicion, disappointment, maybe even hurt. I nodded slowly. I understand, because what could I say? That things had spiraled out of control, that I didn't handle my emotions well? There was no easy version of the truth, so I let it die there. That night, I couldn't sleep. My phone lit up with nothing but reminders of messages I hadn't sent. Hours passed. And then at 3:02 a.m., a message appeared. Come outside. I ran to the window. He was there, leaning on his car, hoodie up, arms crossed, quiet and tense. I slipped out, heart hammering with every step. He didn't speak immediately. I finally said, my voice tight, I can't do this anymore. He nodded slowly, asking why. I couldn't answer. Silence stretched between us. I made mistakes, I whispered. He looked down, shaking his head. We've all made mistakes, he said softly. It doesn't have to ruin everything, I swallowed hard. I wanted to believe him. For a long moment we just stood there, the cool night air between us, heavy with things unsaid. And then, without words, we both took a deep breath, letting the tension ease. No decisions had been made. No promises. Just understanding. Sometimes that's enough to start over. The end. Subscribe for more emotionally charged love stories.